here you all are. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Great to see you on this like early summer evening. We have over 100 fellow founders, aspiring entrepreneurs in the house with us already tonight, listening in. And smashing your social media is a big topic, right? And that sort of title gives us this sense that it's, yeah, we're all hammering it, we're all nailing it. And of course, we know the reality is it's hard, it's overwhelming, it feels crazy. I've just been reading this book called Get Rich or Die Trying about the sort of wild west of the influencer economy and all the badness in it, but entertaining, but scary. And so tonight we really want to break through some of these kind of myths, these fears that we are facing, we have faced as founders, and just share what we've been through. So before we get into our stories and our journey, I'd love you to just say hi quickly and let us know a tool or a social media trick that you currently use that you love, so people get some tips up front. Abi, let's jump in with you first.
Hi guys, my name's Abi. I'm a co-founder of LIHA Beauty. We're a wellness beauty skincare brand. The tool I've started using for TikTok and now use it through all the socials is InShot. It does everything. It's amazing. You can do voiceovers on it. Like you can cut and paste, you can spin things around. It's really good. So that's what I would recommend for everyone.
Awesome. It's called InShot.
Yeah. SHOT, InShot, IN shot.
Amazing. Virgin Startup team will be tagging that and dropping it in the chat. Thank you, Abi. Henry, what about yourself?
I guess, yeah, coming from a slightly different angle, I'm not necessarily like a social media guru, but what we found is that video content for us on Instagram is far more engaging and more highly engaged than some of our static stuff. And we have an in-house design team. My co-founder is a designer. So Reels, we find like a really good platform to get really high engagement.
Fantastic. And just tell us briefly, Henry, about how you make your video content. Are you hiring an agency? Are you doing it all on the fly yourself? What's that look like?
I guess we have the luxury of I guess Alex, my co-founder, being a designer, a graphic designer, and also we make our own stuff, which is quite unique in the, if you call it the RTD space. You know, we have our own vineyards, we have our own winery, so it's quite easy for us to nip down to a vineyard or a winery and just create some kind of ad hoc content, which is quite educational, but also kind of talks to our process and our quality and our Englishness, some of the values that we want to try and kind of portray.
Yeah, and it's a great example. This is a first excuse to drop your Instagram links into the chat. There we go. Kieran's doing the work. InShot is already in there. So Reels on Instagram for Henry. And then if we share the Instagram for the Uncommon, you can start to look at those videos. Now, Corrie, you probably have 100 tools, but what's top of the pile at the moment for you?
I am a big fan of the app Motion Leap, which lets you make cinemagraphs, which is basically when you've got a still image, and like Henry was saying, video is always going to massively outperform image on social media. So you can take that still image and you can animate certain parts of it. And the app costs, I think, about £3 when I bought it. And it's kind of the equivalent of what you'd pay for on Adobe Photoshop and the Adobe tool suite. So that would be my recommendation for people.
And what do you sort of things have you used this for?
It's super helpful for if you don't have that much video content, but you want something to be moving on the feed. And we find that it tends to, you know, when people are scrolling and you've got like a millisecond to get their attention, it's good for getting that kind of second scroll, because people will go past and think it's an image, but then they see some element of it move. So we use it for clients when we want to kind of animate bits and pieces for them.
Okay, great. So we'll talk more about tools, and this is sort of our latest versions, but let's now rewind. Let's go back to when our relationships began with social media and when we started to use it for our businesses. So maybe try and have a think about when you first came into contact with social media. What was it? And then how did you first start using it for business? So Corrie, you're now running a very successful social media agency, which tell us a little bit about that as well. But when did it begin for you? What was your first step into this world?
I mean, if we're going way back, we're talking sort of MySpace days of first using social media. But in terms of business,
she's older than she looks.
Thanks. But in terms of first using social media from a kind of business or organization point of view, I volunteered for a society at uni where I was doing all of their social media, and it was very much the days of like absolutely spamming Facebook groups to try and get attention there. And when Facebook chat and Messenger wasn't even really a thing, so you were sort of writing back and forth on people's Facebook walls. And I remember my very first job, Instagram wasn't really a thing, and I was trying to persuade the senior team that Instagram would be a really good channel for us to get behind, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not sure it's going to take off." So
what was that? Sorry to jump in, Corrie, but why did you think, oh, were you just curious? Were you just like, what made you want to pursue that, explore a new platform? Because that's half the challenge.
Yeah, it really is. And I think we're seeing the same thing with, TikTok and right now, and brands jumping on that. But really for me, it was just seeing the growth and the really high engagement rate. The more kind of saturated with content a channel is, the harder it is to get that organic reach. And back in, 2014, 2015, when I was having those conversations in my old job, Instagram was getting a way higher engagement rate and just giving organic reach to people, whereas Facebook and Twitter and other channels were really pulling back on that organic reach. So that was really what made me pay attention, and then take it to the team and say, we should set up the account here. And obviously now it's flying because Instagram is massive.
Absolutely. And tell us briefly about Untapped. What is it, and how does it help organizations with their social?
Yeah, sure. So we're a social media agency based in London, but we work with clients all over, and essentially companies come to us when they're feeling super overwhelmed with social, can't keep up with all the updates, either don't have sort of the skills in-house or the time and ability to manage social media for themselves. So we help people with creating and managing their social content, paid advertising campaigns, and then designing social strategies as well.
Okay, so it's the mix of the strategy, both technical, so it's like what ads are we placing, where are we going to place them, and the creative, which is like making the videos with the tools we've just talked about and the other content. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That.
And what sort of stage are you working at with businesses? Because obviously to bring on an agency, there's an investment there, although it's saving you a lot of time and leaping forward in terms of impact and business. But what sort of stage do people normally join you at?
We find that typically people have either had some round of funding, or they're at the stage of making revenue and they're looking to scale up their marketing. So quite often people come to us where maybe they've worked with as freelancers to date, or they've had people doing it in-house, and they're at that stage where they want agency capacity of having multiple people look at the project. So typically sort of a couple of years into starting, or have had that funding, like I said. Okay,
great. Alison's just asking again what that app was that you mentioned, Corrie. We need to get it written down.
It was Motion Leap. I'll pop it in the chat.
Thank you very much. So, Abi, can you take us back? Was it MySpace, or was it a little further along? When did you?
It's a little further along than MySpace, I tell you. It's when I was thinking Friends were United. Anybody remember that?
Yeah, and that was a wild story, wasn't it? Because they charged £5 for a monthly membership, didn't they?
Did they? I can't even remember. I must have paid it because Friends were United is where it started for me. Social media. In terms of business, I used to have I had to really think about in terms of how it started business. I used to have me and my sister used to sell vintage clothes, and we got on ASOS Marketplace, and they really encouraged us to go on Instagram and social media, and that's how I kind of got into that. So we would take photographs and put that on Instagram, and this was back in 2000, and I was still running then, so it must have been 2011, 2012. So that's how it started for me. So it was when I started LIHA Beauty, it was just something you should do. You should go on Instagram.
When was this? When did you start LIHA Beauty?
Well, we started our first event, our first kind of soft launch was at Port Elliot Festival in 2014.
Okay, so you went onto Instagram in 2014.
Yeah, we went on, okay. But I say that, but we didn't do very much with Instagram in 2014 because we really started. It was just to test the waters, and I just thought, as an afterthought, I thought we just need to be on Instagram because I knew that was something that's where everybody was going to. but we wouldn't post that much because we didn't have any content. You know, it was just me and Lehigh. I had another job. You know, it was just a kind of side hustle for us. And we were really looking at wholesale. So we were really looking at having retailers rather than being the D2C business. D2C wasn't a thing. Nobody said D2C. No. So we never thought about like really pushing that. But what happened was our retailers, we got into Liberty and we got into Anthropologie. They started doing kind of like the marketing for us. So they would take the photographs and put it on their socials, and all I would do we would just repost them. So it was quite organic. It wasn't anything really thought about or anything like that. And you know, fast forward today, we pretty much, obviously we do our own content, but a lot of our content is from influencers or, you know, customers or from our retailers. We're kind of 50-50 D2C to retail. So we get a lot of traction that way. But yeah, that's how it's.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive intro, and we'll dive into that kind of, especially that influencer strategy a bit later, Abby. But give us an overview of LIHA Beauty, of those who haven't heard about it before.
So we're a natural vegan skincare company. We say our tagline, we're African roots with a quintessentially British attitude. So we're luxury. We create luxury products which are accessible, but like a really cult. So we go into like categories where products kind of missing, and kind of plug that hole in. So we talk about buying well, buying less. We don't have an array of products. So we curate really small product line, and just really cult products that people love and need, and for your wellness and feeling good. So yeah.
And how's the product and the brand evolved over the last, 7 years? Is it 8 years now?
About 6. So I would say we kind of did a soft launch in 2014, just with 2 products. Yeah. As I said, we had our other jobs. So we really came into fruition in terms of like a business in 2018. So we used to make everything in our kitchens. So at weekends, Leah lives in Cheltenham. I lived in Hackney. We made everything in our kitchens, and we'd come together at weekends. I'd go to Cheltenham mostly because I lived in a 1-bedroom flat in Hackney and she had a house. So we'd make it from our kitchen when we could. And then in 2019, we raised our first round of funding, and we outsourced all production, just pre-pandemic, thank God. And so we're, as I said, during COVID, we were a totally D2C business because of COVID, and we grew massively, not massively, but grew enough for us. And but now it's kind of balanced out, 50-50 D2C to retail. But that's where we are now.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how that so many brands, especially FMCG brands, have like accelerated through COVID in terms of D2C. It's not, obviously you still got to win the business, but this is where buying on social media channels has become a big thing, which we'll talk more about. Henry, thanks, Abby. That's a great intro. So many more questions coming your way. Henry, talking about quintessentially English brands, The Uncommon has been creating a stir amongst communities that I'm part of, in and around London. So tell us a little bit about when you discovered or came in contact with social media for the first time, and then a bit more about the business.
Yeah, I guess I started using it back in kind of 2016, 2017, really to document my change in career. I was doing something very, very kind of boring in New York, and I moved back to London and started retraining in cool climate viticulture and enology, which is basically grape growing and winemaking, and just started using Instagram as a tool to give people an insight into kind of my day-to-day life, which I thought was not necessarily like inspirational for people, but just to show people that they don't necessarily have to sit in an office for 30 years, that they can take a risk, and it is a risk. Luckily, I had a very supportive wife who was willing to take that risk with me. But I just thought it would be a nice way to give people an insight into what it would take to build a brand from literally nothing, like not knowing anything about grapes, wine, or brand, in something completely different. So it was very much, it was just a very organic, a very kind of transparent, very kind of authentic way to show the handful of followers that we had at the time what I was doing and what it would take to build a brand. And it's been, 6-7 years. And an outsider looking in would say that 12,000 followers isn't a huge amount compared to some brands that have far more. But we haven't really spent any money, and our engagement's really high. But yeah, it's really to give people an insight into our production process and our winemaking, really.
And it's something that I love about your brands, but also in general, Corrie, we've spoken about this a lot, is that the behind the scenes of the startup journey, it's not right for everyone, is it, to do it? But when you do it authentically, like you obviously have been doing, Henry, people love it. And you just create this niche, for people who are interested in this, like, oh, someone's changed career and is like trying to make English wine a success and doing it, and that whole journey. I'm drinking a dash can here now, and those guys have done the same thing with their wonky fruits and their sparkling waters. And I was with them when they started, and they were like, right, off we go, we're going to go and source our first ones, and we'll put it on our Instagram. And it wasn't polished at all, and it was great, and it built the following. So tell us where the Uncommon is today as a business, what your core products are, and how it's going.
Yes, so we started off with about 5 acres of land. We now have 20 plus hectares. We start with 10,000 units, which we sold with Selfridges. We're now in Selfridges, Fortnum's, M&S, Waitrose, Virgin Atlantic.
I saw the Virgin Atlantic announcement. That's big. Upper class, is it?
Yeah, it's cool. So it's like a bespoke wine tasting, an Uncommon wine tasting experience at 35,000 feet, which is cool. But we make English wines and some new spritzers. But only now, like we started with me and Alex. We're now a team of 8, including like comms and PR, and we have in-house kind of like social media. We've kind of brought that stuff in-house, but only now we're really starting to learn about the power of social media. And now we're setting aside significant investment to really grow our social media and to drive kind of sales on through our website. And
when you say you're only realizing now the power of it, what do you mean?
I mean that there was so much we didn't know, and our priority was we want to get this stuff that we think that is amazing on people's lips, and there's only so far like a picture can take you. So our priority before the lockdown was getting liquid on lips, doing samplings at Selfridges, at Fortnum's, like walking around, handing samples to people. It was very much like, please try this liquid and look at the brands, because I think once that happens, it's a much easier sell-in. So
yeah, you're confident in your product, right? Yeah,
confident in the product. But now we're coupling that with a social media strategy, with paid as well as kind of influence activity. Some really cool activations. We're doing kind of an activation a week throughout the spring and summer, and hoping it all comes together all nicely and cohesive.
Well, I know you already have, like Lehigh Beauty, there's a lot of people with brand crushes on the Uncommon, including Chloe here from Virgin StartUp, who loves the rosé. Do you have any those cans behind you? Can you show those who've never seen it? Can you show us what they look like in the semi flesh?
You see?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so this is a Pinot Noir rosé, which is kind of grown in Hampshire and Kent, and then we have a Bacchus Chardonnay blend, which we have used from again Kent, but also some grapes from Surrey. But it's all very local. We understand that the world doesn't need another wine, but we try and make the best possible English wine with the least impact.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we'll talk about impact and purpose and how we tell our stories through social in a little while. So you mentioned strategy, Corrie. There's 100 or so people here. We're like, how do I put together a social media strategy? Abby and Henry figured it out and are doing brilliantly with it. No, you have.
I really wouldn't say we have.
You're doing well. You're doing well with it, even though it's not easy. But what's if we're starting from scratch today, like we're a bunch of friends, we've got an idea. Where do we start? Do we pick a channel? Do we go, right, where's our audience? Do we use hashtags? Do we start with ads? Where do we start?
So the way that we advise starting, we talk about this a lot with clients actually, and we've got like a very detailed framework, but I'll try and sum it up quickly. That first step is always going to be your goals. Like all your social media activity needs to map back to whatever that goal is. And it shouldn't be that we're just going to use this channel because that's what everyone's doing. Think more strategically about what's the aim of social. Is it kind of top of funnel? You just want to raise awareness and therefore you want to get a lot of page views and organic reach? Or is it, lower down the funnel, you want to get a lot of sales and convert people and get traffic to the website, where maybe you need to look at using paid advertising? So that would be first. Then second, I'd look at channels. So knowing what that goal is, think about who your audience is, where they're spending time online, which channels you can show up on that they are using anyway, and they'll want to consume content from you in that space. And then thinking about that kind of leads on to thinking about the type of content that you'd post there. And I think as startups, we need to be realistic about the content we can create, because there's no sense in saying, okay, our audience would love if we do a daily vlog on YouTube. And then actually you get a week into that and you realize this is the biggest time drain and it's not bringing us back the returns we need. So,
or I'm going to launch my business with a podcast. So you're like, oh, yeah, wow, that's exactly. A full-time job. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's always more work than you think it will be.
Yeah.
So be realistic with content. And then the final part of strategy there would be thinking about, you don't just want it to be a one-way broadcast of content. You want to create that community. So thinking about where you can grow, how people can discover you, who you can kind of collaborate with, where you can do, live videos or competitions and stuff to get the word out there. And then finally measurement, because if you're not looking at what's working and what's not working, again, you're going to be spending time on the wrong things. But if each month you're seeing what content brought us in what results, then at least you're always doing the right things and spending your time wisely.
Brilliant. So there's loads there, Corrie, which people will be playing back to read. But on the metrics, because there are vanity metrics in social media, and then there are metrics that matter. So is there a core bunch of metrics that everyone should be paying attention to? Or is it, say, for example, on Instagram, is it just about likes? Is on Reels just about plays? Is it about number of comments? Is it about number of shares, bookmarks? Or none of that matters. It's just about how many convert to be customers. What do we pay attention to?
I mean, for me, we're always quite keen that social media isn't just this sort of silo, and we never want to help a client in the sense of like, we got you a lot of likes and followers this month. The bigger impact on where you're going to see an actual return from social is going to be things like, traffic through to the site and then sales and conversions. So I'd look at those in greater detail rather than just thinking we've got, a few new followers this month. In terms of seeing what content's working well, obviously that's looking at things like what got the reach, and comments and sentiment of comments as well, I think are more important than just likes and followers.
Yeah, it's the whole picture, isn't it? And when you're working with clients who are going, right, I've got this strategy, but actually, and you're helping, which is fantastic, but it feels too much. What's your advice to people about like staying focused and being lean? And like we're talking about two great startups here tonight with Abi and Henry who have, been through that already. And it's like, now they're like, right, how do we take it to the next level? But when you're really at the start, how do you decide, should I go away and make video, or should I just repost things? And what in terms of the creative and the content side, how do you figure that out?
Yeah, I was having a chat about this with a client yesterday, actually, who has so much content that she can share and talk about and that she's an expert in. And it's very much like, okay, how can we stick to this one stream of doing what you're good at? I think put yourself in your audience's shoes and think of what content they're going to enjoy the most, so that you can go for that quality over quantity. And doing things that really kind of just hammer into people, like even just 3 key brand messages that you want people to remember for those couple of months. It's not that all those ideas you have aren't great to do later, and you can keep like maybe on Trello or Notion or somewhere, anytime you have a social media idea, write it down on there so it doesn't get completely lost. But that might be something to revisit in, you know, 6 months or a year when you've got a bit more resource to spend on it.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. I want to come back to you, Corrie, with maybe a couple of case studies for people to check out, or favorite clients of yours, in a minute or two. But Abi, tell us about some of this, like the customer profile stuff or the personas that Corrie just mentioned. How have you figured out or have evolved at LIHA Beauty to work out exactly who your perfect persona customer is and where they are on social channels, and then reach them?
I wouldn't say we've figured it out. I would say when we first started, our personas were us. We started the business because of ourselves, and to be honest, it wasn't that we thought it was going to be good, the business it's become, but it's certainly evolved into something else. In terms of personas, I think we have like 5 personas customer personas who we try and reach. We've got the Afropolitan, we've got the Yummy Mummy, we've got
what's the first one, sorry?
Afropolitan.
Afropolitan, tell us more.
So Afropolitan tend to be African American women and men who are high, they've got income, they make a fair bit of money, they like to spend their money, they want to kind of reach, they love stuff about Africa but aren't quite sure where to go. And they resonate with us because we talk about, Nigeria and Africa. We educate them about that. We talk about our products, where it comes from, like our shea butters come from Nigeria and Ghana, and they love that. And they want to kind of feel like they're part of that kind of African experience. So they're like, and they want luxury as well. So rather than buy, LIHA always says, than buying Chanel, they'll buy LIHA.
Yeah. So strong identity. They want
to support a Black-owned brand who has that kind of luxury element to it. So that's one of our personas, and we speak to them with our socials by talking about Africa, by talking about how our products are made and things like that, and talking about our history, being Nigerian and things like that, and it resonates with them. So so that's one of our personas. So that's how, and we reach that with, as I said, in our socials, and we talk about things like that. Talk about being yummy mummies who either live in London, like urban cities like London, New York, or they live in, or they've migrated to Cheltenham, like where LIHA lives. She lives in Bolton on the Water, and they want to still feel part of that kind of Hackney kind of New York.
I love this idea of the great migration from Hackney to Bolton on the Water and Cheltenham.
Well, it feels like a great migration to me because I would never go there. But
but it's true, right? It's a big life change. It's
a life change, but they still want to be that kind of, feel the buzz of London while I feel they're still in it.
Right.
And they're so those so those are kind of our personas, and we talk to them about, because me and LIHA are both mums, and we talk about that, and we talk about different aspects of living in Cheltenham, living in Hackney, and things like that. So we have different personas, and we reach them by speaking to them in different ways in our socials. And
does that mean that you have, so they are very different personas, the two you've just described?
They're not different personas, they can interchange. So they could be like, somebody who lives in Brooklyn, she's moved to upstate New York, or she's moved to, like, I don't know, whatever. But she still wants, and she's an Afropolitan, and she still wants to feel so it is interconnected. We've got
the content works for all of them,
and it works, and sometimes we just speak to the yummy mummies and talk about that kind of content, and we that in our socials and our Instagram, our newsletters.
Fantastic. And we're going to come on to influencers next, but Henry, tell us a little bit about the personas of Uncommon Wines. We've got Gina's asking, wines in cans? This is surprising and intriguing idea. Does it taste the same as a glass bottle? Which I'm sure is a very common question for the Uncommon. But how do you figure out who your people are, and then how have you found them online?
Yeah, so I guess we never really came into this with a target market per se. I guess it was probably 25 to 40, probably female skewed. But I think our audience is much more kind of akin to a US audience. I guess I saw it in America, California, Oregon, Washington. People would grab a can, go down to the beach, go surfing, go hiking, go cycling. Whereas our old world mentality is that we feel like we have to have a corkscrew at hand at any point in time. So yeah, I think our persona is very much the open-minded. We also didn't come from the wine industry, so we're not institutionalized by wine language or wine talk, which can be very confusing and technical and a little, I don't want to say the W word, but I'm not going to say it on
a little whiny.
But we now know about wine, but we know what it's like to not know about wine, and we want to educate people on like really good local English sparkling wine that comes in a can, because we believe it's the best format for our wines, which are young and aromatic. They also happen to be more sustainable, but yeah, we just try and we found that kind of it's not necessarily like a younger demographic that's going to music festivals. It's also those people that want to stay at home and have a nice glass of fizz, you know, watching Strictly, but don't want to drink a whole bottle or whatever.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then that's translated very simply. Have you just stuck at Instagram, or have you tried other channels? Instagram. I would say like we probably should try other channels. I mean, Pinterest was on our list for this year, being a very visual brand. But yeah, I mean, TikTok, we've kind of, I feel like, we need to get involved in TikTok, but I find it quite daunting, and we haven't got the time or the resources. So we're focusing on Instagram, putting some paid media kind of behind kind of Facebook and Instagram. Also lots of influencer activity, because I think you can access a huge amount of kind of qualified audience through like-minded people. Pinterest perhaps, but yeah, mainly Instagram. Nice. And we've got a few questions coming in, which are all around like what happens when you're trying to get momentum, or maybe you're getting stuck with engagement. So Colette summarizes it quite well here, Corrie. How do you start and grow your audience, especially on Instagram? I get the same handful of people every time, and only got 300 followers. Like in like olden days, we're like 300. That's amazing. And then you reach 10% of them with each post. So if we feel like we're stagnating at times on our socials, what do we need to change? What do we do in that moment?
So I think about the kind of content you can produce that gets in front of new people, which, if we're thinking about Instagram specifically, is mainly Reels right now. Reels have huge organic reach that will be shown to new people. If you're posting,
because Instagram is the algorithm's prioritizing.
Yeah. And anytime, you know, if like tomorrow Instagram introduce a new feature, they'll start pushing that one, because they're always going to prioritize the new features they put out. Like, during sort of start of the pandemic, when live video was such a thing, and you'd log onto Instagram and it would just be absolutely full of people doing live videos, because it's you know, new, and Instagram's going to push it. So yeah, look out for new features and use them as well, and test them, because if you get on them early, then Instagram's going to prioritize that content. Collaboration content is a really good way to go on Instagram right now as well. So if you do some work with an influencer, or you do, you know, some kind of link up with another brand, you could put a post out that's going to appear on your feed, but also on their feed, and it will come up on both audiences' news feeds.
So this is where we see competitions going on, right? So people say, right, we'll team up with other complementary startup brands, and we'll all give away something, and then we'll reach a much bigger audience as a result.
Yeah, exactly. If you can find another brand that's got the same audience that you're trying to attract, and vice versa, then yeah, it's a win-win for everyone. Nice.
And so let's talk about these influencers, because like the perception maybe for many of us is that like, oh, you need lots of money, and two, they're just like egotistical people who are just going to be like doing lots of, and you know, there's another story in the news today of an influencer festival that's gone pear-shaped. I don't think it's quite Fire Festival levels, but Revolver Festival, which I hope the Uncommon wasn't sponsoring in
No, I hope not. No.
California this week, but apparently it was chaotic, and they prioritized all the selling Sunset cast and and everyone else got left behind. So there's a lot of angry influencers out there. But Abi, you mentioned you work with these so-called influencers. Tell us about that. How does it work, and what's the impact been?
So I mentioned we work with influencers. We don't pay them or anything. It literally is just reaching out to influencers and DMing
for the love of the brand.
Yeah, DMing them and asking them if they want some products.
Corrie, this is the way to do it.
And that's it. We're testing that on TikTok at the moment, and TikTok has got this thing where it's called creative tools or something, where you can access their emails. You can email them directly. I find it hard to use because we can't find the kind of influencers resonate with our brand. So what we've tended to do now, I've been doing it, is literally going on anybody's TikTok that I like and just commenting and saying would they want some products, and then we'll put in our email address and they'll email us. And some of them actually on their bios have an email address. I email them and hang on, are you, in order just to break this down, Abi, are you literally searching through what a hashtag on TikTok saying shea butter, or what are you how are you finding them? I'm just literally on your For You page. If something comes up and I think it looks good, comment and just say if you want some products, we've got like a little little script we've just put it on their thing and yes or no. Nice. And there's no you've got to guarantee this much. So if they have if we email them, on the bottom of our email will say that you don't have to post if you don't like the products. What products would you like to try? And that's it. And that's what we do on Instagram as well. And it seems to work. I really like this approach because it's about the quality of the product. It's simple. There's no sort of structured contracts. No, there isn't. Yeah, the rest of it. Because of what happened last year with the iOS changes, and we don't have a huge budget on Facebook. We've never paid. We've done Facebook ads and things, Instagram, Facebook ads, and we've the most we've ever spent is £1,000, and since iOS changes, it hasn't converted, and so we stopped doing any kind of ads in January. So now we're looking at TikTok. We've just started on TikTok in the last couple of months, just figuring out what works. Because Instagram, it just doesn't, there's no engagement there. Reels is fine, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's just looking at what you can do organically that you don't have to pay for, because unless you have a huge budget, our Facebook ads guy was telling us. Okay, so your Facebook and Instagram ads are struggling for engagement, but you're getting traction through the organic and on TikTok. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so there's no point. We don't have a huge budget for Facebook ads, and so it doesn't pay. The ROAS isn't working, so we stop you doing it. So we're looking at maybe TikTok ads, and Pinterest is something we've looked at. They've done something like stories, Instagram stories, and we've just recently got onto that a couple of weeks ago, and it's and it seems to be working better than Instagram. So, and it's as I'm listening to you, Abi, it seems like your mindset and attitude towards using socials to market and build your audience and community is fairly, it's experimental. It's let's see what happens. You're not going, right, this has to work, or I feel overwhelmed. Just I'm curious, let's try that. Yeah, I love it. I do it. So it's what I enjoy doing. I like to figure things out. I want to crack this TikTok. So I want to crack TikTok. I want to crack TikTok. I'm obsessed with cracking it. And so I want to figure out what works. And I feel like TikTok is a place where you can tell stories that don't have to look plush. Our Instagram is very well put together, well curated. TikTok is this is how I made a whip. This is what I did today. Do you know what? You know what I mean? It's all about educating your for people watching. We're not doing massive numbers on it or anything, but as I said, I want to crack it. And so that's what we're doing. And Pinterest is something I'm playing around with at the moment and seeing what works.
And Henry, I'm going to come to you shortly to talk about influencers and wine. But Corrie, on TikTok, what should we be doing? Who should be on it? What's working? Any nice accounts that you'd love us to check out?
I mean, one account that I love, which is niche for what I do, but it's Mr. Robert Mayhew, and he does all these sketches of what it's like running an agency. So he uses the green screen effect a lot, and he'll do like a really fancy office, and he'll take the mickey of like when a client turns up to an office and they're like, oh wow, cool ping pong table, and like all this stuff that clients would never say to agency owners. So he's grown massively, like mainly through humor and very relatable humor that it's niche, because mainly if you work in an agency or you're an agency owner, you're going to find it funny, but there's still so many of those people out there. So he's managed to grow it a lot within that audience. He also does stand-up comedy, which I think helps a lot with the delivery and making the sketches really funny. In terms of what's working, experimentation, like Abi was saying, is like the way to go, really. The clients that we're working on TikTok with, you see some videos just like massively take off, and it can sometimes be the ones that were sort of the quicker edits and more authentic feeling. We see anything that really mentions sort of numbers or particularly money in the cover photo tends to do better than headlines or subject lines that don't mention that, and just
data points.
Yeah, like mentioning data. So like, for example, if you were saying, you know, what brand made 5K a month versus just like talking more vaguely, including the data always helps, I think, in cover photos, because people like stuff that's got numbers and money in it. And posting a lot, like 3 to 4 times a day to test what's working in the sort of first month.
3 to 4 times a day?
It.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing to hack it for clients. But that is a lot of content, right? So you need to like dedicate time to that.
Yeah, but you're seeing some results there. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It reminds me when you say that, and I learned this when I was doing journalism, but actually the content always falls under like 3 or 4 categories in terms of engaging people. So it's entertainment, and that can be, you mentioned Robert Mayhew, right? So it's a good example. Shock. So we obviously all the extremes we see online is around shock, which isn't necessarily the tactic we want to use in our startups, but it does get attention. And then education / inspiration. One person in the world to like turn up online drinking a can of Uncommon, who would it be?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, we've got a couple of challenges here. I guess we were the first people to bring canned wine to the UK in 2016. People have never heard about English wine. It's still a very marginal wine region. People didn't realize you could get good quality product in can. So it's really like building trust. And I feel like we've used a lot of wine writers and influencers that, I guess, kind of in Abi's space, kind of not the yummy mummy space, but kind of the young mums that kind of want a break from the day, to really kind of justify the product and give it credibility. So wine writers we work with, and we give them product, and they write very nice things about us in kind of the national press, but also kind of more approachable kind of micro type influencers, and sometimes we might pay people only because we're at a stage now where content creation gets very expensive. So if we can pay an influencer a certain amount of money, we can dictate the content we get back. We can use that content for ads. We can use that content on organic. We can use it for newsletters. We can use it as kind of more kind of accessible media. So we found some influencers to be really useful. We've paid some that have been massively expensive and not hugely
successful. Tell us who we shouldn't pay.
No,
I mean, Rihanna was a big shout for a startup to, you know.
But some of the mistakes we made was we're not necessarily looking at. I mean, we have a very metropolitan audience. It's female skewed. Some of the influencers we used had a 70% audience that was based in the US, or they're outside of our kind of target demographic, and that just wasn't a smart decision. So we're very much focusing on engagement rates and how these people talk to the audience that we're trying to tap into.
Yeah, yeah. And the great thing about both your brands is they're so visual that, and I know you can't get the smell of the shea butter over across. Well, not yet on social media, but at least you can get people and drinking and using the products. So, Corrie, how do we go about, like, and this is kind of where I want to look beyond our customers now. We've got a few more minutes and we've got a few more questions coming, so we're going to hammer through them. So the power of social media as you've used it to grow your business, or the impact, the purpose of your business, because you run very purposeful businesses. So not just about getting customers or engagement and so on. How has social media helped you with other goals? Has it helped you with stocklist, with partners, getting certifications like B Corp, getting new clients, Corrie? You know, where else has social media been an asset to you, or has actually been a distraction or a problem? Corrie?
The first few years of running the business, I think I definitely found it a distraction, because I felt very much that, you know, if we needed to be using it all the time as a social media agency to kind of show the power of it, and then the more we worked with clients that we could actually use as case studies, I kind of stopped feeling like that. But the way that I'd say I found it most helpful is that, you know, being a founder of a business is quite a lonely thing to do if you don't know that many other people who are doing it. So there's so many amazing online communities that you can be part of, or even just, you know, following other business founders and seeing them post the stories that it's been a really hard day, and you're like, oh yeah, me too, like hard days happen. I think where people can be quite honest and authentic about how the business journey is going, that's where social is so great to follow along on stories. Obviously there's the flip side of people posting, you know, how much money they've made and all the like amazing stuff that's happening. But if you can take it with a pinch of salt and be like, okay, well, they've had a great day today, but I'm sure yesterday was rubbish, then I think that's where I found it really useful on sort of a personal level. Yeah. And you've been really good at this, is, you know, following Untapped Digital, because actually making a social media agency stand out on social media, people are like, why haven't they got 1 million followers? It's sort of like, I'm not going to use them. But actually what you've done really well is you shared your own ups and downs and journey, and what you've been up to. Like, I'm off here to talk about this, and then you're constantly like, here are some tips, here are some tips. So if you want regular social tips, including how to deal with all these changing algorithms that people keep asking about here, follow Corrie and Untapped. Abby and Henry, what about like how social media has helped you? Abby, has it helped you with stockists and partners, retail partners? Yeah, I think so. I think the first port of call for retailers is Instagram. It's like before your website. Before your website. We've been very fortunate. We've never paid for like PR or anything. It's just, you know, from stockists to you know, being in Vogue or being in whatever on This Morning, it's nothing that we've done because we can't afford it. It's just something, I think, because our products, like you mentioned, are very visual and we're able to bring it to life. And Instagram has been such a great help and a tool for us. I think retailers are looking for something different, something they don't have in their store, on their website. And so it's and it looks amazing, and it is, and the products are amazing. It makes it so much easier for us. So yeah, I think it's been great for retailers and just PR. And yeah, it's been amazing for us. And then Henry, for the Uncommon, the B Corp journey, has that been something you shared a lot on social? Yeah, it has, and that was a cool thing, with kind of the first wine brand in the UK to get B Corp status, and we kind of knew that we were doing the right things because we were part of Sustainable Wines of Great Britain. Like, we knew about wastewater management and yield management and how to recycle packaging and how to not use anything nasty. But it was very much a validation of what we were doing. And it also gives you like a very nice framework for improvement. And it also introduced you to lots of kind of cool
brands. Like we did a load of stuff with it was B Corp month last month, and we got introduced to loads of cool brands that are doing similar sort of things. So I think people think that because we're in a can, therefore we're sustainable, therefore we get B Corp status, but it's so much bigger than that. It's all about locality and how you manage your land, how you make your wine, how you look after kind of stuff post consumption, your community, your workers and things. I couldn't recommend it more highly, and it's just an amazing community of people.
And I think when we're all on these journeys of building purposeful and impactful startups that have so many elements to them, this is where social media can really help, because you can break down the story, you can update at different stages. It's not like a one-off printed brochure or a polished website or a product package where you've got limited sort of real estate to do the selling and the storytelling. So a couple of questions to wrap up. So Amy says, a friend works with spicy moustache. I don't know if you worked on this one, Corrie, which grew to 1.2 million followers on TikTok with gardening tips. There you go, to put us back in our places. He started during lockdown. Oh my God, this is getting worse. Apparently going live after you post helps. Oh, okay, so apparently going live, so going from posting to doing an Instagram live, making sure you're responding to comments immediately helps. Any tips for putting yourself out there on video without feeling self-conscious? It's not easy filming yourself. And content creation takes ages. How do you manage it successfully? Corrie, do you want to pick that one up from Amy?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I'd say about filming yourself on video content is like, just start and do it. Start filming, and you're never going to love it the first time. But you know, when it gets sort of the 5th or 6th time that you're maybe doing that take, you'll feel hopefully mildly fine with watching yourself back. And also, when people see you on video, they're not thinking like, oh, my hair looks weird, or, you know, then they're just focusing on what you're saying and the message that's coming across. So you'll be most conscious of anything that you're worried about. You can also do things like, you know, there's websites you can use that if you've got a script for your video, which I would really recommend, because if you're feeling self-conscious about it, if you've got some sort of script or guideline for what you're saying, that can really help. And you can get sort of transcription sites that are going to show you that, like a newsreader would see when they're presenting the news. So yeah, just have a play and know that it's not going to be perfect first time, but the more you practice, hopefully the less self-conscious you'll feel.
And then, you know, beyond the practice and the habits and all of that, how have we all felt when it's like this? You mentioned up front about this idea of like overcommitting to saying we're going to post on YouTube every day or write a blog every week or whatever, because then you're like, no one else cares about that, right? But you suddenly made this commitment. How do you manage like that, the overwhelm side of social media, when you're just it's just like, I mean, you as users of social media, we feel it, right? How do you manage that yourselves personally and as a team? Abi, what's your sort of approach to it when it's like, it's getting too much, but we've got to keep going because our customers and our competitors and our business and blah, blah, blah?
So we don't have a list of like, amazing social media strategy. There's only 3 of us. And we've got a commercial director, and there's LIHA and myself. So we do as much as we can. I think we've got to a point where we kind of know when we're going to post, and we kind of do a weekly thing. We don't feel compelled to post if we don't want to. I think people can see, I think, you know, your followers can see when it doesn't come naturally to you. And we don't do lives, which is something that we did say at the beginning of the year we're going to do, not so much lives on Instagram or TikTok, more on our website. So there's this tool where you can, so it's bringing people off like these external sites onto your platform. We've done it once, we haven't done it again. So they come to your platform and, you know, you talk about your products. We're doing something next Tuesday, but it's with somebody else's platform, and it's like talking about our products on there. So it's collaboration. They do lives on their website, and it's almost for us to get into a practice of doing it. And they do it every day. We're not going to do every day because we don't have that many products, and we don't have anything to talk about that much. So it's something we want to do like 2 times a month or something. And it's just talking about where we are, our products, and it's bringing people onto our site rather than these external sites. Yeah.
I love this. It's so reassuring for everyone who's going, oh no, I need to do a huge strategy and stuff. It's like you really lean to enjoying it.
But we don't have the time or the capacity.
No, but that's how you've made it work for you and your business, which is fantastic to hear. It's really good. Henry, how do you deal with it when you feel like, oh, another platform, or I'm like, I've got so much to go on. Why do I have to do this as well? How do you cope with it all?
I guess our year is quite formulaic. Like we know when harvest is, we know when winemaking is, we know when we launch our products. So we actually kind of know. We have a social media calendar that we're working on like 6 months in advance. So we know what we're posting in kind of October, November, and that's only it's not prescribed and manicured content. It is just content that we know we're going to be picking grapes in October. So that's kind of our couple of weeks. So we know we've got an activation in Covent Garden in a couple of weeks. So that's get some influencers down and create content then. So we actually do kind of know what we're doing almost week by week from now until the end of the year. But that's taken a lot of work and kind of 6 years of bringing a team on and understanding how to create content, how to optimize content through time, and try and drive engagement.
Yeah, I love that. Nature's seasons drive your social media strategy. That's good. Can't alter those. And Corrie, finally, if we strip it all back, we've got lots of people, lots of questions here around like, where do I start? What's my strategy? Which we talked about up front. But if you're going to say, right, if you've got a couple of hours a week or 10 minutes a day to do this, how should we spend our time with social media?
I would, if you've got a couple of hours, I would think of like 4 or 5 content pillars. So stuff that you want to post about. And within that, think of the common FAQs that you get, or use a site like Answer the Public, where you can see what the Google searches are for your audience, and then create content around that. So like purely just focus on content that looks good, is helpful to people, answers their questions, and start posting that and see where you go from there.
I love that, using FAQs for your startup as a way of building content for your social media channels. And then of course you can repeat it, right? Not spam, but you can say, oh, well, we've done this at Rebel Book Club. We found like memes that we created probably back with you, Corrie, when we were working on it together, that worked well 18 months ago. We've just reposted around book reading habits and so on. And it's great. It works really well. So you don't have to go and recreate all that content and make it all again. It's been so good to have this conversation with the 3 of you and the 150 of you who've been joining us over the last hour. Thank you so much. It's one of the main comments coming through is people like, it's so much, and like, where do I start? But there's lots of people now saying thank you for the feedback and for the tips, and also the attitude towards it, which is really important to hear and see that you all bring to it, not as gurus or experts, Corrie aside, because you're helping people every day with their strategies, but just building it passionately for your business. So looking forward to seeing Henry dancing on TikTok with Rihanna at Glastonbury on account of the Uncommon. And lovely to reconnect, Abi, and hear about the success of LIHA. And Corrie, as always, it's amazing to see. Corrie was on stage in front of 3,000 people the other day. I know that was a big deal for you, talking about social media tips. So well done for keeping going and doing uncomfortable things. We are now going to go to a chat room, a couple of chat rooms actually. You can see them on the left hand side here, so they're called sessions. If you go to one and just come and jump on and have a chat with me or the Virgin Startup team, talk about loans, mentorship, all the things that Virgin Startup do brilliantly. Or come and share what you're working on, because I'd love to hear about it and make some connections. But to Henry, Abi, and Corrie, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And keep building your brilliant brands, and we'll be sharing them lots more with everyone. Take care, guys.